Hi everybody and welcome to today's Art of Procurement. I'm your host, Philip Ideson. Corporate travel is one of the most complex spend categories that procurement leads and has been in a state of flux resulting from the global COVID-19 pandemic. How should your corporate travel policy change to reflect new realities? How do you negotiate deals when volumes are uncertain? How do you account for traveller safety? And how do you integrate sustainability into your travel program? Well, we will be covering all of these pressing issues in this 4-part special series brought to you by Art of Procurement in partnership with Egencia, the world's business travel platform. Today, in episode 2, I spoke to Delphine Boulton, Director of Consulting at Egencia, to discuss different approaches that procurement teams can take to negotiate travel deals when traveller demand is uncertain. For context, I started by asking Delphine if she could share a little bit about her current role.
So what we do at Egencia Consulting is that we support travel buyers and travel managers navigate the current travel markets. And in particular, it's newest trends and supplier strategy, which have changed a lot recently. We give our clients an opportunity to deep dive into their data, look at their program performance, and we give them recommendation of how to optimize it, whether it's through travel policy recommendations, end-to-end supplier negotiations, which I think we'll go a bit further into, or even ongoing monitoring. And I would add just that we also give a little bit of perspective, because I think that's something that is very a buzzword at the moment. But our clients have the view from their window, and we have a much broader view with most industry verticals, destinations, and suppliers. So we help our clients get that more inclusive strategy as well and view.
Now, you talked a little bit about data. What kind of data is it that you're looking for that makes it, I don't want to say that makes your job easier, but that you look for that helps you kind of build those strategies that inform your clients on what are some of the best strategies and tactics to take?
Well, that's a great question, and we are very positive at Egencia because we have access to a lot of data. And currently, what we encourage our clients and what we use the most is the very up-to-date market data. What is available at the time of booking? And this is a data that was not available in the past. We tend to rely on fairly outdated data, and this is where our actions and recommendations lie at the moment, is very much in the last few days, last few months, weeks at most. Where do we stand on those bookings data?
And I'm sure right now, here we are at third quarter of 2021, and even data from a month or 2 months ago isn't necessarily real time because of how quickly things are changing.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. We try to look at months over months, week over week. The further we go is quarter over quarter. The usual year on year is left to really maybe reassure us as to how quickly we rebound.
Now, the conversation for today's podcast is around negotiating deals, and we have all this uncertainty. I wonder, when you're looking at negotiating or renegotiating deals, how far in the future right now do you need to be able to project demand for the air carriers, the hotels, the car rental companies to actually want to enter and engage in a negotiation with you?
So suppliers know the context as well, and they have it for all of their clients. So they don't actually expect to have buyers presenting them with a very clear view, 6 months to a year, potentially even 2 years volume data. What they know is the travel buyers are currently faced with a mix of requests. They have very little visibility, both on timeline and volumes, and those keep changing. Yet they are expected to be ready. As soon as travel rebounds, the travel programs need to be ready. So we encourage our clients not to wait until they have full visibility, full clarity. And we know from the sanitary crisis that it's not all about volumes anymore. New travel cultures have been implemented, and hence duty of care, and hence sustainability goals. I know you have another episode on that. And there is a need for this purposeful travel that is included. So it's not all about volumes, but it's more about how do we focus on our core partners? How do we focus on our core needs? How do we accommodate our new travel culture? And then how do we include flexibility in these contracts so that they can go on and adapt to whatever the pace of the rebound will be?
Now, do you see that as being similar across all kind of different types of travel, or is the nuances when you're looking at airline deals versus hotel deals versus car rental deals?
Well, I would say that we see more similarities depending on the destinations and differences than categories. So if you operate on a route or a destination that is very corporate travel focused, then we'll have a level of discussion that will be very different than if the destination is already, I'm going to use the term, enjoying a little bit of a leisure rebound, a leisure segment rebound. So we see more differences with that. However, we also know, thinking about differences, airline contracts have always been more volume-based than hotels or car rentals for that matter. So we see a shift there. And airlines are more willing to engage in a market share approach or even market share gaps approach than pure volume-based. So that's more the difference we see. Hotels are finding it difficult to find their feet, I would say, at the moment. And we see very different approach in terms of pricing strategy. Not so much volume-based, but more about what rate types they are willing to give.
Now, historically, you would perhaps look at the end of year and you would go to market, and you would do this for any of the categories and really take a broad look at all providers, all chains, all airlines. Maybe you're anchored around a particular key supplier, but you would look broader than that to negotiate the best deals you could where you could find them. Are you seeing now that it makes more sense to focus on those critical partners and be closer to a smaller number of partners to kind of play on the relational side of things, as opposed to looking at buying travel as a commodity?
Definitely need to focus on your core partners, simply because it requires a lot of time and resources to understand those core partners' strategy and their context. We touched based on the car rental, but depending on the car rental financial model and fleet model, the car rental will have a different approach to sourcing. So we need to understand which are those partners that we have a strong relationship. We maybe had a strong relationship in the past and we are willing to continue it. And then how are we going to do that? And how are they going to support us in all aspects? And I think suppliers are inevitably willing to do that. Now we know, and we are faced with companies where there is still a huge focus on hard savings, and looking for challenges is inevitable in those situations.
Do you have any, let's say you have somebody who comes to you and they're wanting to be ready for the rebound so that they don't then lose out, because I see that there's a potential of being scarcity of supply when you have as a rebound, if a rebound happens quickly. How do you protect yourself against that? I'm thinking more from an air perspective, because I think that's where it's probably harder or it will be slower to ramp up supply than it will be from a hotel place. So is there ways that you can protect yourself against that when the rebound does happen, you're not going to be found where either you have to pay extortionate spot prices or it's really hard for you to get seats on, any of those major business city pairs?
Yeah, I think that's a question a lot of buyers are asking at the moment. And the first key is to make sure that you stay on top of your contract's validity date. And what are the options, if your contracts are still running, what are the options you have to update, and how quickly can your partner update a route, a discount, a booking class that you need to use. So this is very key. We see a lot of airlines, there's been a lot of consolidation, and within the alliances and the joint ventures, the airlines are really trying to find the best solution to generate demand. And at the moment, our airline partners are very open to discussing, because they understand that they will need corporate travelers will need them. And so they are still looking at it. As I said a bit earlier, I think what we need to understand is how dependent are we on one route, one airline. Offices are unlikely to move. The biggest projects were put on hold during COVID, and they are now going to reopen. So we can have an idea of where our first needs, where we will have the biggest volume first, are. And then we need to engage those conversations on those routes and destinations for that matter.
Yeah. Now, it's kind of on the flip side is ensuring that there's a get out clause or a termination language or whatever it may be, so that there's the ability to get refunds, or if you're making reservations, booking, perhaps you're doing for big, whether it's for big events, whether it's for just expensive tickets. Are you seeing there's more flexibility from carriers, hotel groups, car rental firms to actually allow you to cancel and get refunds kind of closer to the day of travel than what you may have seen before?
So cancellation policies have always been part of our negotiations, and we've always aimed at having the shortest cancellation policies possible. So in that respect, we don't see a major shift. Okay. What we see is that companies have actually updated their travel policies a lot. And the reason for travel, the anticipation is changing, so the advance booking is changing, and that has an impact. Now, we have seen with the sanitary crisis that the industry was not ready to handle massive cancellations and massive short-term cancellations. And we got better, all of us, and we're not there yet completely. So I don't think there will be a major change in the contractual verbiage. I think the industry has had a obligation to change. Yeah. And now we're ready to face this type of situations. Travelers' behavior have changed anyway. And I think travelers are now trying to, currently at least, and I would foresee for the next 1 to 2 year minimum, only take a trip if they need to. And so are unlikely, unless really pushed by governmental regulations or sanitary regulations, are unlikely to call upon those cancellation clauses anyway.
So my last question, you touched briefly on a lot of clients looking for cost savings. Where can they save money? And that travel is obviously one of those categories that they look. It's kind of interesting because on one hand, it's a category that folks look for cost savings. And on the other hand, with not much volume, it's demand management is already doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of savings with people not traveling. For those organizations who are still doing some travel, who are still wanting to identify opportunities to negotiate savings, are there any particular areas that they should do that? Or is the situation that we're in right now just so where it shouldn't really be something you're focusing on in terms of your travel program?
So, we've talked a lot about sustainability, and we forget that one part of being sustainable is being there on the long run. And no company can be there on the long run if there's no profit and no savings. So there's one point where we do need to consider that aspect anyway. What I would say is, first, you need to understand what is your baseline and methodology to calculate savings. Because as you said, we don't really have much volumes, and we certainly cannot use a baseline that is so outdated that is no longer relevant. And we mentioned about some new routes or project being put on hold. Sometimes you don't even have a reference, and it's non-existent. So I think the first thing is redefining the baseline and methodologies around calculating savings. And what I try to get my clients to focus on is how are they performing versus current market. Yeah. We talked earlier on about this data that is available, and trying to get these savings versus current market rates over year savings, which is a little hard for some procurement officers that we know, but it's a conversation we have to engage. And then we need to understand, how is travel bringing value? So is the ROI only in the sources exercise, or is the ROI, as you said, in having a more purposeful travel, dedicated travels to certain projects that we know are going to get the company into a better market position than its competition, and trying to have a broader view of travel. It's a different way of calculating savings, but we do need to calculate those savings. We need to reach out for them.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast, part of our special series in partnership with Egencia, Pandemic Pressures, 4 key pillars to evaluate in your corporate travel program. You can listen to all the other episodes in this series by going to artofprocurement.com/travel21. That's artofprocurement.com/travel21.